Okay, it's me again. My name's still Jim Britton, and I'm still the current president of the City Club. And now I'm going to call to order the meeting for today, our program. So our program today is the new jail and diversion programs. Where do we stand now? Thank you for coming. It's a great crowd, and we appreciate you being here. The mission of City Club is to inform, connect, and engage our community to strengthen the civic health of our region. We emphasized civic conversations and listening to others. We begin by acknowledging with humility that the lands where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Seas. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of the traditional homeland of the Coast Salish people, and it has been that way since time immemorial. As always, I'd like to thank those of you who volunteered to assist us today. If you're one of those volunteers, please raise your hand. I know there's more. Okay. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge those who are our sponsors. They provide important support for us to continue to do our programs, and they are Peace Health St. Joseph Center, Baron Smith Maxwell, Bruce and Claudia Descend, Danny Neal, real estate broker with the Moyoc Group, Firehouse Arts and Events Center, Colson CPAs, Opportunity Council, Pacific Continental Realty, Unity Care Northwest, Village Books, Western Washington University, Whatcom Community Foundation, and the Salish Current. Let's acknowledge them. Puget Sound Energy. Okay. So for those of you who are not members, I'd like to encourage you to consider becoming a member. The membership dues are really the most important support financially for us to do our work. And so I encourage you, if you haven't yet become a member, to do so. It's $45 for an individual, $70 for a household, and $10 for those who are 25 or less. And you can do that by either filling out a form that's on the table there and leaving it, and we'll follow up for payment, or going to the website, and you can take care of it on the website. Our next program we are particularly excited about. So we have coming a nationally renowned expert on the Constitution and constitutional law, named Garrett Epps. He is currently a professor of constitutional law and practice at the University of Oregon, and has been a constitutional law professor at the University of Baltimore, American University, Boston College, and Duke. In addition, he has written 7 books, numerous articles and legal periodicals, over 400 articles in the Atlantic, and he is currently the legal affairs editor for the Washington Monthly, where he co-hosts a weekly podcast. So we are thrilled that he's coming. We expect this to be a capacity crowd next time. And so we're making some special arrangements for those of you who are members. And that is, if you are a member, you will have the entitlement to register until between now and June 8 before we open it to the general. We expect a number of members from the Whatcom County Bar and the Whatcom County Judiciary to be, and we expect to sell out. So I encourage you to quickly go and register. And as a shameless plug for becoming a member, so get on the priority list by becoming a member between now and June 8th. So sign up for that. So finally, I'd like to remind everyone, please silence your phones. I'm talking to you, so if you haven't looked, please do so. Please silence your phones. I'd like to acknowledge the two members of the Programs Committee who worked tirelessly on this particular program, and that's Jill Bernstein and Garrett O'Brien. So thank you for that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Garrett, who will serve as the moderator for our program today.
Thank you, Jim. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, City Club members, guests, and panelists. Thank you for joining us in this important discussion about the new Whatcom County Jail and Behavioral Care Center that's built on Labonte Drive. Okay, for a bit of background, our current jail, which is located downtown in Bellingham, was built in 1984, and it's obsolete. Can I get a show of hands? Anybody who's been toured through the existing jail? Yeah, I think it's appropriate that it was built in 1984 because it's pretty dystopian. It's right out of a George Orwell novel. Hopefully, as a guest, yeah. The current jail facility was poorly designed and constructed. It doesn't have behavioral health programs. It's overcrowded and unsafe for both staff and inmates. For over a decade, effort has been made to improve and replace the existing jail. Money that was allocated for improvements and renovations failed to adequately modernize the facility, and voters twice rejected levy proposals to replace the jail. Many of you who have followed this process know that the issues of public safety, incarceration, behavioral health, and the restoration of individuals are inexorably interlinked and infinitely complex. With this understanding, in 2022, a diverse group of community members, including civil servants, behavioral health professionals, formerly incarcerated individuals, and elected officials, worked together to perform the research and the community engagement needed to present voters a viable option for a new jail that not only addresses public safety, also offers a new approach to how we detain, treat, and hopefully restore individuals who end up in our criminal justice system. In November of 2023, Whatcom County voters approved an increased sales tax levy to fund the construction of a new jail and behavioral care center. An important component of the levy proposal was that a significant portion of the funding goes to be allocated to behavioral health programs and facilities, with the goal of reducing rates of incarceration and recidivism, and ultimately providing better outcomes for public safety and community health. The combination of building the new jail with the behavioral care center presents an opportunity to approach criminal justice than we have in the past. And can we agree that we need to do things differently? Thank you. The goal for today's program is to keep us informed on the progress that's being made on the planning and the execution of this project, and to signal to our elected officials that we expect the promises of a more humane, effective, and restorative justice system are to be delivered upon. This is the largest public works project in the history of Whatcom County, and it represents a significant expense for our taxpayers, an expense that the majority of voters approved, but did so in the acknowledgement that we shouldn't be building another jail that will be obsolete in 40 years. We expect that our new facilities will not only be state-of-the-art, will also offer new hope for our shared community values of reducing the harm created by crime, addiction, and incarceration. This mandate is, but not impossible, and that's why we're here. To learn from, but to encourage those responsible for delivering a successful project and ongoing outcomes. As mentioned before, the complexity of this undertaking is massive, not only in the building of sophisticated infrastructure and the professionals needed to operate it, but also the cooperation that's needed between governmental agencies, elected officials, and service providers. Some of you may recall last June, the City Club hosted a program on this same topic. We heard from County Executive Sat Paul, Whatcom County Sheriff Don Al Tanksley, and former Director of Whatcom County Health Erica Lautenbach. We learned of their respective roles and responsibilities in the planning and delivery of a successful project. We learned that cooperation between our public health agencies and law enforcement needs to be enhanced in the new jail and behavioral care center. We also learned that a request for proposals drafted to solicit bids from professionals with the expertise needed to oversee and execute this project. We're going to learn more about that today. For your reference on the tables, there should be a couple of handouts that explain some of the acronyms that are used, as well as a graphic of the sales tax funding for monies that have been collected to date. Now I'd like to ask Jill Bernstein, who she really did the lion's share of the organizing for this program, to come up and introduce our panelists. Thank you very much. I hope you guys all enjoy the program. Thank you.
I am so delighted that you're all here. For all of the reasons that Garrett just said, this is an issue that's really important to our community. It's important financially. It's important for the health and well-being of all of us as we go forward. Anybody who hasn't been touched by crime would be in the minority here in this room, whether it's a family member, a friend, a neighbor, whether you've been a victim, whether you've been somehow otherwise involved in the criminal justice system. There are a few places in our community that haven't been touched by crime, justice issues, and more. So thank you for being present. And for those of you who want to know more about this today, remember our friends from Village Books are in the back, and they've got a ton of good books on the subject that can help you to dig deeper and know more about this important subject. It is my real pleasure. I can do better. It is my real pleasure today. It is my real pleasure today to introduce our guests. From my perspective, they are esteemed and knowledgeable and giving us a huge gift of their time by being present. With us today in the middle, in a yellow shirt, is Stark Follis, and Stark has been practicing law for almost 40 years. He started when he was a child. He's a prodigy. He is licensed in Washington and Alaska, and he has focused those 40 years primarily on criminal defense, both as a public defender and as a private lawyer. He is currently the director of the Whatcom County Public Defender's Office, managing a staff of 50, including 27 lawyers. He has been a leader in policy related to criminal defense by serving on the board of directors for the Washington Defender Association and participating in helping to set policy in the state of Washington as it relates to both law and justice. He has tried numerous homicide cases, including 3 in the past 14 years, all this while managing that large staff. Stark will be with us today to talk about the programs in existence today here in our community to work on alternatives to incarceration. And you'll see on that list of acronyms, LEAD, GRACE, and more. He can talk about where we are today. And seated to Stark's left is Councilmember Barry Buchanan. That's a good plan. Councilmember Barry Buchanan grew up in Whatcom County and began his career in the U.S. Navy. And after serving 7 years in the Navy, Barry went to work at Lockheed Missiles and Space Company in Sunnyvale, California, where he worked on numerous NASA programs. Barry and his family returned to Whatcom County in 1989, and he began his public service. After serving as president of the Lettered Streets, he was elected to the Bellingham City Council. And after serving a 4-year term on the Bellingham City Council, Barry was elected to the Whatcom County Council, and is now serving in his 3rd term. Barry chairs the council's Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. He is the founder and architect of the Whatcom County Justice Project and has been a leader in calling for behavioral health and substance abuse disorder components to be a part of the new Justice Center. He also serves on the National Association of Counties Health Policy Steering Committee that advocates at the federal level for funding and policy development. Barry will be talking today about what are the plans to take what Stark has to offer and move us into the future as to what is planned for the new facilities for behavioral health, substance abuse, and other treatment and diversion options that are envisioned for our community as we move forward. And Kayla Schott-Bressler serves as Whatcom County Deputy Executive, where she oversees the county's work related to the Justice Project and social services, amongst other priorities. Prior to working in the executive's office, she served as the Skagit County Deputy Administrator after several years at Skagit County Public Health. Kayla holds a master's degree in American History from the University of Washington and a Bachelor of Arts in History from Occidental College. Kayla is going to bring us up to speed as to what's happening with this new jail. As Garrett mentioned on your table, there's information about how much of your sales tax dollars have been collected so far, where we are with the planning of a new facility, or I should say new facilities, and what are the challenges that we're going to face going forward. This is an exceptional panel, and I hope that you will join me in welcoming them to our afternoon conversation. So, Stark, why don't you begin and tell us what are we doing right now?
Well, we're speaking to the City Club right now. I think is my mic working? Yeah.
Just pull it real close.
All right. So I was listening to Jim's opening remarks about how the City Club doesn't have the money to bring high-end speakers in right at the moment. So now I understand why I'm here. Thank you for that. As Jill said, I'm the director of the Whatcom County Public Defender's Office, which is a very large organization. Other than the prosecutor's office, I believe we are the largest law firm in Whatcom County. 1982, the office began with 5 lawyers. I now have 27 lawyers. That is a reflection of increased complexity of the justice system, growing population, growing crime rates, and what have you. We only do the county courts. We do Superior Court, District Court, and Juvenile Court, but we do the lion's share of all the cases in those courts. It's a very high volume practice, and we strive to give the community a bang for its buck in terms of representing people charged with crimes. We also advocate for systemic change. I served on the State Advisory Committee, which was the group that came up with the Justice Project plan. I was told not to touch it. All right, I'll lean in. Really close. Okay. All right. How's that? Okay. I also currently serve on the Justice Project Planning Committee, and I was a little surprised to actually be asked to be on that, because in a lot of places and a lot of jurisdictions, people don't care what public defenders think about justice projects and what jails look like and how the system should work. But I feel very fortunate to be in Whatcom County because they do care about what we think about the new jail and what we think that it should look like. And I view my role in that committee primarily in three ways. One is our access to clients. We have to be able to get in and out of the facility and see our clients easily, efficiently, and in a setting where we can work the cases. Right now, we have 2 visiting rooms that are available to us in the current facility. And so when you're trying to get 27 lawyers in to see several hundred inmates, 2 visiting rooms is grossly inadequate for that to happen. And make no mistake, as our access to clients is restricted, the justice system slows down and it becomes a bottleneck. Secondly, we want to improve and make sure our clients, all of our clients, have access to services when they are in the jail. At the last meeting that I went to regarding the behavioral care center, there was some debate going on about whether people that don't go to the behavioral care center that's planned should also get services in the main jail. And I took a very strong position that is the case, that we should make services available to everyone who is incarcerated, whether they are in the behavioral care center or not. And they used to do that in the existing facility. They used to have 12-step programs. They used to have GED programs. They used to have counselors. They used to have mental health programs. And all of that has just kind of slipped away over the years. It has a lot to do with funding, but it also has a lot to do with an inadequate space to accomplish those things. So as I give input on the Justice Project Planning Committee, as well as the Behavioral Care Center group that has formed, I'm going to advocate for those spaces and try and make sure that all the clients, whether they're in the behavioral care center or not, are afforded treatment. And finally, we want to have a humane jail. The people that were involved with this project went on several trips, but the 2 notable trips that we went on was one to Nashville for a new jail facility and another one in Columbus, Ohio, Franklin County. And what we were struck with there was jails that had open air areas, that had windows, that had murals on the walls, that were not Alcatraz, so to speak. And we deal with such a high level of people that are suffering from mental illness. The idea of locking them in a cage and limiting their human contact to 1 hour a day is extremely detrimental to their mental health. And it's one of the reasons why Whatcom County has, thank you, one of the highest rates of competency proceedings that are going on, where people are in waits to go to Western State Hospital to be restored for competency. We see our clients deteriorate rapidly in the facility that we have now. My office is about to be going through some changes. There are some caseload standards. Perhaps some of you have read about those in the newspaper. The Washington State Bar Association has recommended a near 70% reduction in public defender caseloads, and that is pending before the Washington Supreme Court right now. And word can come down literally any day about whether that's going to happen. I don't personally support the magnitude of those caseload reductions, and I don't really see a way forward for caseloads to be reduced that much in terms of funding and in terms of finding people to fill those positions. But that is coming, and that is going to be a big problem for Whatcom County as well as the other 38 counties in Washington State. What's the solution to that? The solution is to reduce the number of cases. And there's only 2 ways to reduce the number of cases. One is to reduce the crime rate, which I think everyone in the world supports. But assuming that isn't going to happen overnight, the only other true way to reduce the number of cases is to implement diversion programs so that people go to different sorts of resolutions other than the criminal justice system. And I think either Jill or Garrett mentioned that there were some acronyms that are on your tables. We have several alternative dispositions available to us in the criminal justice system right now, and I'll just go through a few of them. The mental health sentencing alternative, the drug offender sentencing alternative, the family offender sentencing alternative, mental health court and recovery court, which was formerly called drug court. None of those are diversion programs. Those are alternative dispositions. A true diversion is where someone does not enter the criminal justice system. Either at the time of the arrest or sometime prior to the time of the arrest, they are diverted. into either the behavioral care center that's going to be built or into some other type of program, and it doesn't come across the prosecutor's desk for filing, it doesn't go to the public defender's office for representation, and it keeps the numbers down in the criminal justice system. That is, in my opinion, the only way that we are going to be able to cope with these reduced caseload standards long term. In order to do that, we have to have the prosecutors on board. Right now, Whatcom County files as many felony cases as Snohomish County files. We have 230,000 people in Whatcom County. Snohomish County has 803,000 people. And I don't know where the problem lies in comparing those statistics, but in Snohomish County, they have 26 lawyers doing the same number of felony cases that we have in Whatcom County, and I have, I think, 17 lawyers in Superior Court doing felony cases. So there's a vast difference between the way Whatcom County is doing things and the way Snohomish County is doing things. And I haven't been able to reconcile that yet, but clearly we have to have the prosecutors on board in order to get behind a diversion program. Now, they have pressures on them as well. They get pressure from the retailers. They get pressure from homeowners whose homes are broken into, and I get that. I get that. But we've got to have the prosecutors on board in order to get diversion programs rolling in Whatcom County. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the Behavioral Care Center. I didn't go to Nashville. I think Barry went to Nashville. The way it worked in Nashville was someone was walked up to the front door of the jail, and they either went left into the jail or they went right into the Behavioral Care Center. And I think there's a lot of people that think that that is along the lines of what we should build in Whatcom County. And so if there are identifiable behavioral health problems, when someone is being arrested, they could divert into the Behavioral Care Center. They could stay there for some prescribed period of time, and then theoretically they would be rewarded in the end by not being prosecuted for the offense that they came in on. I think you would have to build some things into that, like allowances for any restitution that might be owing. But primarily we want to address why this person is being arrested and not simply punish them for the fact that they were arrested. There's a lot of debate about whether the services at the Behavioral Care Center should be exclusively outpatient or whether they should be exclusively inpatient. I think that it should be afforded to both out of custody and in custody people. I think that anyone, whether they're in or out of custody, should be able to participate in the services that are provided there. The programs that I would foresee being available in the Behavioral Care Center would be, as I said earlier, a 12-step program, GED, mental health services, medical services, reentry services, very important. We do have a reentry program in the jail that we currently have. I think it could be more robust. I think it could be better. What is reentry? It's helping people with housing before they are released from jail, helping them perhaps with employment before they were released from jail, helping them get set up for appointments for mental health services and treatment before they're released from jail, so they don't just leave the jail and go into the community without any kind of safety net and go back to the homeless encampment or go back to the whatever lifestyle they were living that brought them into the jail to begin with. I was talking to somebody the other day about what other types of services could be done, and she mentioned specifically Nashville, where volunteers from the community come in and read books, or they play music, or they do art classes, or they do things to make these people feel more human again before they are released from custody. And I think that those are all things that could be contemplated by the Behavioral Care Center. I'm here to tell you that the Behavioral Care Center will be built. If the jail's built, it will be built. It's baked into the bond. It's baked into the cake, and there's no wiggle room. The question really is what it will look like, how big it will be, and what sort of services will be available in there once that it is built. But as long as I'm serving on these various committees, I'm going to make sure that we get as robust a behavioral care center as we possibly can.
Well, thanks, Stark. That was awesome. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you all made it out today. And I'm here to talk not only about diversion programs, but how we kind of got here. some of the processes and some of the stakeholder engagement, community engagement that we went through to get to where we are today. So what we're going to be talking about is the needs assessment was what Stark referred to with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Talking a little bit about the background and the community engagement that was involved, the scope of that work, and some of the recommendations that came out of that. Then the next phase after the needs assessment was the implementation plan. How to take those values and goals that we identified through the Stakeholder Advisory Committee process and put those into actionable plans. So the needs assessment, really the whole justice project started back in 2018 when a few of us decided that it's time for the council to have a criminal justice and public safety committee that isn't merged in with public health and public works, but that is really focused on criminal justice. So we formed a 3-person committee, standing committee in the council, and that's really when the Justice Project was born. We went on a listening tour that lasted about 6-7 months it took us. We went out to 7 different locations in the county, and the one constant message that we got was that we believe in treatment over punishment whenever possible. It's not in the community's best interest to just lock people up. It's in the community's best interest to identify ways to restore that individual to a really healthy lifestyle. So some of the things that happened after the listening tours, we adopted a resolution that was really the kind of the principles behind the Justice Project. There was 14 planning principles that the council was putting forward for what the things that we would want within a new facility. So we formed the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. It had 36 people on it, which 20 of those were community members. So it was a very robust committee, a lot of representation from a lot of different sectors. So once the Stakeholder Advisory Committee finished their work, we had a needs assessment. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee was a new approach for Whatcom County. The previous 2 jail ballot measures that failed, 2015 and 2017, really had it had no behavioral health components to the proposal whatsoever, and it had little or none community engagement through the process to find out what does the community want to see. So here it says 38 members. It fluctuated between actually 36 and 39. We had 10 official meetings, and then we had 7 workshops that were in between meetings. The Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, that's that IPRTF you see. That's something that's been around since 2016. Stark's a member of that. We tend to have all the stakeholders at the table. So that was a good launching pad for a lot of this work. So that community engagement began. We established visions, values, and goals for a criminal legal system in Whatcom County. We looked at data, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and then a couple of the programs that you've heard about, I think, was GRACE, ground level recovery. Somebody help me with the acronym.
Response
and coordinated, yeah, okay. So, and then the LEAD program, which is law enforcement assisted diversion. So one of the key aspects of that stakeholder committee was that we established a behavioral health gap analysis team, which really dug in and did the hard work of finding gaps in our system. It was a lot of folks from the health department, a lot of folks from outside, but that had a lot of experience in behavioral health. And then we considered what it would take to fill those gaps. So those recommendations that came out of there to address all of our public health and safety needs. So we found that there was kind of 3, in this little Venn diagram, 3 things that overlaid, and that's services, systems, facilities, which are community, and the jail. So when we're talking behavioral health services, we're not just talking about in the jail. We're talking about more robust services out in the community. as far as our engagement went, we had over 400 subscribers to the email list. We actually went into the facility and conducted interviews on incarcerated individuals and staff. We had town hall listening in the council chambers where we had over 100 attendees. And then we had a communications consultant that really helped us reach the public in ways that we thought of, but we just weren't that good at it as far as going out through social media channels and so on. We had a lot of priority working with tribal nations, Latinx communities, and people that had been previously incarcerated and their families. That's a very important voice in this discussion. So when we came up, here was the kind of the final statement. It was Whatcom County will uphold and promote community safety, health, and justice. And to accomplish this, we'll reduce crime, as Stark mentioned, and reduce incarceration through early interventions and long-term investments in people and programs that support prevention, restoration, and accountability. That's also an important to that little triad. Prevention, investing in children and families upstream is a paramount thing that we need to focus on. We need to look at racial disparities. And as far as restoration, we have to devote resources to a variety of behavioral health programs. Housing is a key element in the criminal justice system. We, Stark and I think Kayla went too, we went down to see the Link facility. That's a facility down in King County that is a prosecutorial diversion program. One thing that made their program work is they had some housing that they had a kind of a continuity of services where people could go into, they called it respite housing. That was kind of the first level. The next level was people that were a little more advanced through the system, so they needed a little bit less care, but it was all around being a community home. These were some older homes in King County that were restored for this purpose. But so they had not just isolation, they had like a family setting. They could go out and they could barbecue, they had a garden they could tend. So that was really important, the housing. Accountability is paramount. The voters really wanted us to have accountability for public safety. So that is something that we really focused on as well. The scope of the needs assessment was to action and projects to advance 16 needs and 32 recommendations that came out of the needs assessment in a short 1 to 3 year time frame. This was kind of a summary of what came up with the needs. Increase access to inpatient competency restoration that Stark mentioned. That is when someone is determined by the courts to not be able to stand trial. They're not competent to stand trial. So they need to go through a restoration process. And up a year or a little more ago, those waiting lists to get beds at Western State were in excess of a year, correct? Like sometimes in the 14 months. So people had to sit in a correctional facility waiting for that restoration. Really terrible, right? It's something that we really focused on. In fact, we formed a work group, kind of got spun up out of this called the Competency Restoration Work Group that actually worked on that issue. Reduce the number of people in jail pre-trial. We have a lot of people in jail that are pre-trial, and the amount of time they spend before case resolution. We have to address just proportionate incarceration of BIPOC individuals and include them, victims of crime, and people with lived experience in decision making. So not only that stakeholder advisory committee, but the work going forward, we need to have those voices at the table as well. I'll skip ahead to kind of the facilities that came out of that. A new jail, the size and design should be based on a fair analysis of population, strategic investments to avoid unnecessary incarcerations, that would be diversion programs, and providing space and equipment. As Stark mentioned, the current facility just doesn't have room for a lot of those programs. The implementation plan, like I said, was the kind of chapter 2 of this book. And March through April of 2023, we had 5 workshops that were with a lot of the Law and Justice Council, and which is the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force. They're one and the same. We did a poll back to the participants of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. We had 28 responses, and so on. We went through this whole list of outreach. The implementation came up with 15 specific action items or projects in 5 categories. One was oversight, accountability, and transparency. One was to increase behavioral health services. One was to build facilities needed to promote public health and safety, expand the capacity of programs to reduce incarceration and reincarceration, and make system changes with local, regional, and state and federal partners. We established one of the accomplishments was a new subcommittee within the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, and that is the Justice Project Oversight and Planning Committee. That was accomplished in Q4 of 2024. And the other committee that came out of that was a Justice Project Finance Advisory Board to look at kind of and we've added facilities to that title now. So they're looking at the kind of the hard construction, the costs, the performance of the sales tax measure, and so on. Workforce shortages, that's a big item in just about everything we see. Corrections officers, behavioral health services. We need to increase the capacity of existing programs so we can divert people. 23-hour relief center, that's separate from the behavioral care center. That was something that we're looking at putting out at the division area where we have the Ann Deacon Center for Hope. Build a new jail and identify what additional facilities are needed to support people. Bolster reentry, make sure that people leaving have transportation at a safe destination when they get out, and maintain and expand supportive housing for people. Like I mentioned before, housing is really important in this equation. Continue to make changes in court systems. That's a collaboration with our local justice partners in the judicial branch, and expedite access to competency restoration. So we adopted the ordinance that rolled up and all these recommendations that came out of these 2 efforts, and actually the implementation plan became an exhibit to the ordinance, so it is law. And then when we went out to the voters, the sales tax approved that by 63%. It was almost a mirror image of the 2017 ballot measure. So I think reaching out to the public was key, but really diving into these other programs that we need in our justice system. Behavioral health is such a factor in everything that we do in criminal justice. So that's the end of what I have, but I did want to mention one other thing that we saw in Nashville, and that was little vocational niches too. Like they had, which was dear to my heart, I'm a musician, they had like guitar lessons, they had singing lessons, they actually had a barber training course. So they really forward thinking in how they prepared people for the next stage of their life. So anyway, thanks again for being here.
I'm interested to hear from Kayla, but also interested to hear about a correctional facility that give people sharp objects like scissors and so forth.
She needs a mic.
Yeah. No.
Can everyone hear me okay? No.
It's turned off.
Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Let me know if it's not working. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla. As you heard, I'm one of 2 Whatcom County deputy executives, and one of my roles is overseeing the implementation of the executive branch's Justice Project work, including working hand in hand with our council, with our facilities department, sheriff's office, consultants, public defender, prosecutor, and others on getting this new jail and behavioral care center built and accomplishing the other priorities of the Whatcom County Justice Project. I've lived in Whatcom County for about 10 years, and like many of the people in this room and in this community, I was not enthused about previous proposals to construct a new jail. And I certainly never thought I would be helping build one, but here I am, and I'm actually quite proud of the work we've been doing over the last several years, led by Councilmember Buchanan and others. I worked with Councilmember Buchanan and our team in the executive's office to help write that 2023 Justice Project ordinance, both because I recognize that providing a safe facility for detainees and employees is a core responsibility of county government, which, as like I'm a bureaucrat at my heart, and so I feel like this sense of institutional obligation, and because I saw a new consensus emerging in our community that we don't want anyone in jail simply because they are sick or have no other place to be. This is the vision that I think the voters in our community are striving for, and a core tenet of the Justice Project, and it's going to take us a while to get there. Sometimes I wonder if it's going to be possible because there are so many forces outside of our control, but it's really our guiding principle as we pursue this project in collaboration with partners in city government, criminal justice system, and with the community as we do our very best to adhere to transparency, accountability, and having these conversations about the difficult road ahead in public. We're sometimes criticized in our office for not communicating more about jail construction, which is what I am here to do today. I've heard from a lot of folks that they would like to hear more about our progress. And I think part of this is our office's sense that the rest of the Justice Project, the stuff that Stark and Barry have been talking about, the incarceration prevention and behavioral health strategies, are more meaningful to the community than jail construction per se from like a facility standpoint. And in many ways, as like folks working on this day to day, those are the pieces of the project that we like working on, talking about. They're more meaningful to us. They're more interesting to us because the Justice Project's much more than building a new jail. And it's about reimagining our criminal justice system with a focus on rehabilitation and successful reentry. The new jail is just one component of that project. But I know you're all anxious that we're never going to get the jail built. So I will share our progress, which has been strong over the last year or so. So as Barry mentioned, in late 2023, the voters approved this new sales tax, and subsequently we worked for several months in partnership with the cities and Forrest Longman over there to figure out how we were going to jointly pay for the new jail and behavioral care center. And so we passed an interlocal agreement between the county and the cities in 2024. We spent the remainder of 2024 preparing our internal team to launch the project. We hired a construction manager, solicited firms to serve as our owner's representative, and we continued to do environmental assessment work and preparation at the LaBounty site. Early this year, in 2025, we brought on STV, which is a national construction project management firm with a lot of criminal justice experience and also a lot of local experience working primarily in school construction here in Whatcom County and elsewhere in Washington State. So STV is our right hand as we move through the design and construction process. Right now, we're working hard and just had a meeting today to continue the selection of our design builder for the Justice facility, and we plan to have a contract signed late this summer. This firm is going to lead us through the programming and design phase of the project and serve as our general contractor as we move forward. Executive Sadhu has made it very clear that see this project delivered on time, and so we're allocating resources to strive to meet the target of opening the facility in 2028, which is extremely ambitious. We have also kicked off work on the vision and project scope for a behavioral care center, which Stark talked a little bit about. This is essentially a diversion facility, primarily for low-level felonies and some misdemeanors. We're working closely with the prosecutor, the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, the sheriff, and other stakeholders to figure out this therapeutic alternative to incarceration. This is, I think, the most ambitious component of the Justice Project. It's a new model in Washington State, and it is going to be difficult to sort of figure out what the right recipe for this facility is going to be. It's going to take multiple branches of government working together to commit to the use of the facility in the long term. The last thing we want to do is build a diversion facility and have it empty because we don't have a system that's willing to refer to that facility. So we need like sort of some long-term commitments, right? We need to figure out some creative funding and behavioral health licensure strategies. And we're going to obviously need a behavioral health workforce that's in short supply. The biggest policy question we're wrestling at the moment on the behavioral care center is where in sort of the continuum the diversion happens. So are we looking at pre or post arrest diversion? Is someone technically incarcerated while they're in the behavioral care center? Is it a community-based setting? How are we all going to structure this from an insurance perspective, from a licensure perspective? So those are all the issues that we are dealing with at the moment, and are happy to sort of take questions, solicit community input, and very much would like the community engaged as we work through some of these tough decisions. As we look toward the construction of this facility and others, we've really been advocating for funding and policy change at the state and federal level. We need both like funding for facility operations. We need workforce development strategies that's much beyond what we can achieve as a local government, including better reimbursement of Medicaid and behavioral health services. And I think, as you all know, there's much uncertainty on the horizon. Washington State ranks much worse than average when it comes to rates of mental illness and access to care. The federal government is retreating from its support for Medicaid, so we're fighting an uphill battle here. But we know the community is dedicated to this vision, and we are committed to meeting our commitments to the community and not shying away from these difficult things and having these conversations very openly and publicly about the difficulties that we face. And the challenges in the behavioral health system are not our only constraints. I think, everyone is worried about revenue for local government. Our revenue expectations so far, we're not meeting them. I think we based our projections on like an average of the last 20 years of sales tax growth, and sort of already starting to worry about stagnation in sales tax, and tariffs and other things are certainly unlikely to help the picture. So at the same time as all of you talking about sort of city club budget and where you're having your facilities in a post-COVID environment and cost escalation, we also are anticipating cost escalation on this project. So we are going to have to wrestle with some of these tough choices about what we want in this facility. How big is it going to be? What are the services we want? What is our community vision given resource constraints? And we know our future predictions are always going to be imperfect. So this needs to be an iterative conversation as we move forward over the next 18 months to get to a sort of final budget on the facility as we conclude the design phase in 2026. So I provided a handout of sales tax revenue that's been collected to date. All of the revenue that's flowing into the county at this point is going into a dedicated account and is being spent on facility construction. The cities retain a share of revenue from the Justice Project sales tax, 25%, to spend on incarceration prevention and criminal justice purposes during this initial period while we're working on the construction part of the project. So our commitment to you and to the voters is that we're going to keep communicating with you as we walk through these decisions with respect to a changing revenue landscape and the program's capacity and of the new jail and behavioral care center. I think the biggest sort of lingering policy issue that hasn't been resolved with respect to the jail construction is how big of a facility are we talking about here? So right now we are working with a consultant on a jail capacity analysis, which is essentially going to make recommendations on what should the size of this facility be and the configuration of the facility. This is going to be informed by data from the sheriff, the prosecutor, behavioral health treatment providers, and municipal law enforcement. And we are looking at things. I just want to give you a little more detail about the type of data we're looking at. We're looking at over 20 points of data going back over 10 years. And we're going to divide the data by gender to analyze sort of what's needed in terms of jail capacity. Metrics include things like number and types of arrests and bookings, average daily population, inmates released within certain time periods, inmates held over certain time periods, recidivism rates, outstanding warrants, population growth, the impact of potential diversion programs and behavioral health issues among this population, and the impact of booking restrictions. So we hope to wrap up this analysis this summer, share that with our advisory boards, with the county council, and come to some decisions around project scope as we move into the next phase of the project. I think, the interlocal agreement talks about the full cost of the facility, or the projected capital cost of the facility, being known in 2026. I think we are still on track for that, but I know there's this lingering question, well, what's the cost of the jail? We don't have a design for this facility. We don't have a scope for this facility yet. So those are really going to be the core work over the next 6 to 12 months to figure that out, present that back to the county council, and prepare to get consensus around how to move forward. We're also working on increasing our community engagement as we move into the design phase of the project. So with STV, with the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, to ensure that the community has opportunities to provide input on questions of capacity, design, and services. As I listen to the questions you may have today, one of the things I'm really curious to learn is which parts of this are most interesting to you. Where do you want to have input? We'll be looking for clues, because I'm not sure we have a great sense right now of whether folks are really interested in weighing in on construction related matters like design, or some of the bigger policy questions we're wrestling with, like how do we balance jail capacity and costs? How do we support successful reentry? And what are the overarching decisions we should be looking at as we move forward with the Behavioral Care Center? So please tell us what you would like to have input on, and we can structure our community engagement opportunities around that and other feedback we hear. If you don't have a chance to sort of vocalize that, you are welcome to send a note to the executive's office or give us a call anytime to talk about that. We do know that the two most important commitments to both our partners at the cities and in law enforcement are, and to the community, are to build a safer facility that reduces the need for booking restrictions and won't require us to rebuild this facility in 20 years. And then to the community to spend at least half of the justice tax revenue on incarceration prevention programs beginning approximately 6 years after the passage of the sales tax. So all of our efforts right now are focused on meeting those competing commitments, discussing the trade-offs with the community transparently, and very happy to answer any questions you have today or at another time.
Well, thank you to all three of you. That was fantastic. I know I have a million questions, but Garrett and I agreed that we would just start the conversation with questions going forward, one for each of you, and then turn this over to the audience, who I'm sure will also have questions. And Stark, Barry mentioned that there are two programs. One carries the acronym of GRACE and the other one of LEAD. What are these programs? Do they come closer to being the sort of diversion programs that you mentioned that we need? Who decides who gets to participate in these programs, and what is their efficacy?
When I first heard about LEAD, it was at a seminar in Seattle, and it was a program started by the Seattle Police Department in conjunction with their prosecutors and public defenders down there, and it literally stood for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. And the way it was described was someone would be encountered on the street, perhaps in the middle of the night, for low-level felony offenses or misdemeanor offenses, and they were given the choice of going to jail or going to LEAD, and there would be a LEAD program person available 24 hours on a 24-hour basis to get somebody enrolled in this diversion program. And if they agreed to go into the services that LEAD was providing, they were not charged, they were not booked into the jail, and they were diverted out of the justice system. When it came to, we got a grant, and it came to Whatcom County, and there were decisions made not to implement it as a law enforcement diversion program. In fact, it stands for something quite different now. It's let everyone advance with dignity. which I'm not sure exactly what that means. But basically, it's a conversation initiated program where law enforcement, and I think primarily Bellingham Police Department, encounter people in the parks or in the encampments or whatnot and try and convince them to go into the lead program. And it really does not necessarily have anything to do with an arrest or a crime being committed. So it is not at all a diversion program. It is a progressive program. It is a program that probably impacts Bellingham municipal courts in terms of low-level street crime in the city of Bellingham. In my view, it has had zero impact on my office and zero impact on the prosecutor's office, because the people that we see are arrest-initiated contacts with law enforcement, and those people are not going to lead and they are not going to grace. The lead and grace programs are claiming great success with a lower recidivism rate amongst those people that are in their programs, despite a catastrophically high unhoused rate of people that are in those programs. Like 85% of the people are unhoused that are in those programs. But because they are not arrest-based, they really don't have an impact on us. What I believe we need is what I described earlier with the behavioral care center, where somebody goes left into the jail or they go right into the behavioral care center. And if they go right, I don't see them, the prosecutors don't see them, the judges don't see them. And the question is how to implement that.
And Barry, we've heard about all of these various committees that are working on issues and what the executive's office is doing, and there'll be time for public engagement, but who's the decider? I mean, who's going to say this is how big the facility is? This is the scope of the services we're going to be receiving. Who's going to make those final decisions?
Well, I think what we'll get is we'll get some recommendations that will come out of this capacity study that's going on right now. And ultimately, the council will make those decisions. They'll work in conjunction with the executive's office. We'll review those plans. But those plans will also get a lot of review along the way before it gets to the council. So there'll be the IPTRF, which Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, will certainly see it. And the JPOP committee, which is a subcommittee, as I mentioned, that's doing oversight work. It's going to be very well vetted, and the council will make the final decision.
And Kayla, which staff members from the county are managing STV? That's the group that you mentioned that has all this experience in design work and construction process. And what is the level of oversight that is planned for STV?
Our oversight of STV, is that your question? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the contract with STV and the day-to-day work is managed by the county's facilities department, which is overseeing the construction of the jail facility. The executive's office is also quite involved. I'm meeting with STV and our facilities team several hours a week. The executive meets with STV. So there is daily contact, I would.
Well, here's a fresh one, because now Garrett's going to walk a microphone in the room. And but do I understand that you are providing the
Executive is ultimately providing the oversight, and the day-to-day work is happening between the county's facility team and myself.
Well, thank you. And to any of you in the audience who have questions, give a hand raise and we'll try to get to all of you. And Garrett will be reaching you as he can.
Come on over here. I keep the mic though, so you can't go on too long.
Not to put any of you on the spot, but do you know why the prosecutor's office is not here today? Not represented.
I don't. I wasn't in charge of putting this panel together. Perhaps you can answer that question.
Okay.
All right. We need a mic.
You want to answer that, Joe, or you want to just pass on that?
We put together the best panel that we could think of to discuss the specific issues before us today, which is what are we doing, where are we going, and what do the challenges look like? There are dozens more people in the community who could be represented on the panel. That would include representatives from STV who are unable to participate today because they are at a meeting looking at things like capacity, am I right, Kayla? Or they're at a planning meeting today and couldn't be present. There are many other people in the community, including people working with behavioral health, who we would love to hear from, but we chose 3 who could focus us in today on the specific questions before us.
Thank you. Michael, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. So I was on a stakeholder advisory group with you, Stark, and also facilities and finance group. So it's kind of a question. I am worried about. The original plan was to take the lion's share of the money in the early years, pay down that debt. That early period is now longer than it was. I'm worried about the fact that that might impact the ultimate scale for the behavioral care center. Worried. My question is, are you worried? Should we be worried? And what could mitigate against our concern? The design build, state funding, what are things that might mitigate against these concerns?
Thank you.
Councilmember Buchanan, do you want to take that, or would you like me to? You go first. Okay.
You know, I think we need to do some scenario planning right away. Some what ifs. What if tariffs drive the construction costs through the roof? What if sales tax doesn't rebound? What if some of the state monies that we count on for so many things don't happen? What happens with Medicaid reimbursement? Michael, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of unknowns that we have no control over. But I think the best we can do is we need to plan for those things. And what do we do if we see these shortfalls? How do we rebound from that? What does it do to our timeline? And what does it do to other programs that are in existence that might have to share costs out of certain funds? So I share your concern. I think we need to keep our finger on this pulse very closely. And I'm glad you're on the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if you could say more about the type of crime or situation that might lend itself to a diversion program. I'm thinking that somebody, for example, with a drug possession offense on one end of the spectrum versus somebody on the other end of the spectrum with like serious assault with physical or trauma damage to the victims. In terms of community engagement, it's going to be a lot harder sell in the community.
That's a great question, and I think you've drawn the line exactly where it needs to be drawn between people that present a physical danger to the community as opposed to crimes of poverty. We've all been to Fred Meyer in recent memory, and remember when the jewelry and the booze was behind locked doors? Now it's the tarps and the camp fuel that's behind locked doors in Fred Meyer. We are inundated with what we call shoplift burglaries, where people that are homeless go into Fred Meyer and other stores and steal a bar of soap or steal bug spray or whatever, and because they've been previously trespassed, it becomes a burglary. And there's a lot of pressure that's brought by the retailers on the prosecutor's office to prosecute those kind of cases. You know, but it doesn't solve the problem. They get out in 30, 60, 90 days, and they go right back to the encampment, and they go right back to Fred Meyer. So I think really the line needs to be drawn between crimes of poverty and crimes where they present a physical danger to the community. We're not talking about diverting murderers. We're not talking about diverting sex crimes. We're talking about crimes of poverty.
Thank you.
I've heard the deadline. First of all, I think we all agree that the reason that this passed with the voters is because of the diversion facility. And now with all these variables, I'm wondering whether a diversion facility is ever going to happen. And what can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a core principle of the interlocal agreement that is signed with the cities. It is a part of our entire sort of construction management program to fund and construct both of these facilities. And I would say it is, you know, I think one of the questions that Garrett sent us in advance was like sort of who's in charge of making sure that this facility actually gets built. And right, like our elected officials are there to be accountable to the voters and to make these really tough decisions as we face hard trade-offs, and it is up to all of you and the public to hold us all accountable to getting this facility built. So I don't think it's a question of if it is going to be built. I think there is clear recognition that this is the voters' priority, even more so probably than a new jail. It is about figuring out at what scale, sort of under what framework and how we're going to make it happen financially. So I guess I don't really have more to say or any indication that part of the project is sort of facing any compromise or threat. I would say much more, not to put more anxiety out there, but much more than the capital costs of the behavioral care facility. Like, we really need to be focusing on the operational costs of that facility, and that is where I have the most anxiety. We are having these really hard conversations right now about the various insurance reimbursement options based on where it sits on the diversion continuum, and like, we really need to be having those conversations before we sort of decide on the final construction design and program. So I'm much more worried about that, because that is a future cost every single year that the county will bear, whereas this construction cost is one time that can be bonded and spread over 30 years.
Thank you, Kayla.
So just wanted to add some good news. Whatcom Community College has two relatively new degrees, one in substance use disorder and a brand new one in clinical social work that's going to fast track licensure for clinical social workers, which are billable by Medicare. But my question is the interest on these funds going into the general fund, or is it staying in the jail fund?
I believe the fund, or the ordinance that established the fund in county code, has the interest earnings benefiting the fund. I'm like 95% sure.
Thank you.
They're 5% because I remember that. Yes, that's true.
So
Yeah.
95 plus 5, we're 100%
We're
sure
100% sure that that's true.
Okay, we got a question back here.
I wanted to ask a question about Medicaid funding, and as many people know, when you're in jail, you lose your Medicaid. But Whatcom County is in the process of getting a waiver from that, as other states have done, so that 90 days prior to release, the Medicaid funding is reinstated. Can you talk a little bit about that issue, and also when people are not in custody, like on an ankle monitoring, I believe they're still able to retain Medicaid. Can you just talk about the role of Medicaid funding and the operational costs of the new jail?
Yeah, I'll do my best, and you two chime in if I've missed anything. We might have to sort of have further expertise in the room if we want to have any follow-up conversation on this. I think one of the pillars of the Justice Project is leveraging Washington State's relatively new 1115 waiver to provide Medicaid services for incarcerated individuals. It's great. There's hope on the horizon. Not only has the state approved the waiver, but both the sheriff's office and our juvenile detention administration at Whatcom County have signed contracts with the healthcare authority for startup funds to build the technology and infrastructure to start being able to bill Medicaid for services. I think the scope of services that are billable is are fewer than we hoped. It doesn't cover sort of the full cost of any healthcare delivery service in these detention facilities the way you would get in like an inpatient treatment facility or in a hospital. It covers like certain billable services like reentry or medication for opioid use disorder. So fairly concerned that it's not going to be sort of as beneficial as we hope from a revenue standpoint, but are still in the process of moving forward with implementation. And we think it will be hopeful and additive to the services. And certainly from the client perspective, not having insurance turned on and off and back on all of the time is a very positive thing for the individual and will help support health and reentry.
Thank you. Tim, I'm making my way over to you.
Thanks, Garrett. Douglas. One of the difficulties, and we're seeing it, I think today is a good example, there is so much detail in this, and it is so hard for people who are even greatly interested to stay in touch with it, other than going to a lot of meetings and things like that. Would you please describe the dashboard that is being considered as a graphic so that any of us could go to look exactly where things stand at any moment in time, and also where that dashboard will be made available and accessible?
this is something that's ongoing work right now. We're still defining the data we want onto the dashboard, of course. We just need to do a better job in general of communicating to the public. And I think, Tim, you're right on the money. We need to do it in chunks that the public can really, A, benefit from, and B, understand easily. So a dashboard is a good way to do that. Once we get the data, I believe the dashboard will reside on the Justice Project page, which is maintained by both the council side, the IPTRF side, and then the executive office side on the construction side. So it's really important that that dashboard be clear, easy to find, and that people could really benefit from the data that's presented.
Okay, we're gonna do one more question. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I guess I get to be last. One thing that's barely been mentioned today, and I think it's important, especially most of the citizens, is the role of the courts in this whole process. And I know that a lot of people, most everybody out in the public, is frustrated with what we call the catch and release programs, that too many people being released out into the community without anything happening. And how is this project going to help address that problem?
Thank you.
That's a really good.
As Jim mentioned, City Club is working on all of this.
That's a good question. I've been doing this for 39 years, and I don't mean to at all, but it really is the prosecutors and the defenders that drive the train here, and the judges generally go along with what we come up with. The catch and release situation is very much a situation that we've had here in Whatcom County for a long time because of the booking restrictions. I can never remember a time in my career where I've seen defendants with so many cause numbers because they get out and they commit another crime, they get booked back in, they get out and they commit another crime, and we go through the calendars and people have 6, 7 cause numbers, because of the booking restrictions. I think the goal here is to eliminate or substantially eliminate booking restrictions. But I also think that the goal here is to create a safety net for people who are released so that they're not just released back to the homeless encampment. They're released to a treatment program, to a housing facility, to a mental health facility, or something along those lines. Because catch and release is no different than catch and do 30 days and release. You end up the same place.
I just wanted to add one thing about booking restrictions. And yesterday, the council got a briefing from Sheriff Tanksley about how the booking restrictions have been not eliminated, but they've been changed in a way that has 3 categories, kind of like DEFCON 1, 2, and 3, but it's green, yellow, and red. And what's unique about this new system is it's available to all the officers in the field through the dispatch system. So if they're going to try to book somebody, they can call it up on their patrol car laptop, and they'll be able to see, no, there's booking restrictions on the jail right now, but it's all updated in real time. So once that's cleared, that flag comes off that booking restriction, and the officer can see that now there's available space. So it's a lot better than what the booking restrictions were before, because it was like you had to make a phone call, you had to find out if there was room, but now it's going to be automated through the dispatch system at 911.
I love ending on a positive note, but I don't want anyone to leave the room yet. There's a couple of more details. First of all, would 100% of you join me in thanking Jim Britton for his service as president to City Club? He's just done a wonderful job of moving the organization forward, and someday we will have better microphones. For today, before you leave, because I know you all care a lot about this subject, don't forget that Village Books is present with a lot of information, and I hope you will avail yourself of some of it, and also avail yourself of Kayla's invitation to write to the county executive and share your deep thoughts. And to remember that there will be opportunities along the way for public engagement, and that means all of you. You know, we have nice, good, caring, visionary people know that they intend to do a good job, but it's really all of our responsibility. So let's stand up for that. And today, please join me in thanking our esteemed guests for their time, the gift of their time today. Thank you, each of you.